4 House of Representatives and a record number of lawmakers to the state houses. It is a great achievement for the Indian diaspora in the United States. From Gopio International, we have several officials present here. President Sunny Kulathakal, our Vice President Ram Gadvi, our Treasurer Keval Kanda, and international coordinators Harbachan Singh and Dr. Asha Samant, our Associate Secretary Jason Modi, and we will be joined by our distinguished Lord Rami Ranger as our chief guest for the second segment of the program. So now we start with the program. Thank you all for joining. I would like to introduce our speaker, Professor Arvind Pangadia, who will speak on New India, Reclaiming the Lost Glory. A few words about Arvind Pangadia, Professor Pangadia. Dr. Pangadia is the Professor of Economics and Jagdish Bhagwati Professor of Indian Political Economy at School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. In fact, this particular chair, I had a role as a co-chair of the campaign. But the chair was made possible. Chair was made possible because of a large contribution donation by Sridhar Menon, who is also in this event today. A few more words about Professor Pangadia. Between January 2015 and August 2017, Professor Pangadia served as the first Vice Chairman of Government of India's think tank Niti Aayog. In the past, he has been the Chief Economist of the Asian Development Bank and Professor of Economics at University of Maryland. He has also worked for the World Bank, IMF, WTO, and UNCTAD. He was a PhD from Princeton University. Professor Pangadia has authored or edited more than 15 books. And most recently, the new book, New India, Reclaiming the Lost Glory. Government of India honored Professor Pangadia with Padma Bhushan, the third highest honor the country bestows on anyone. About 20 minutes for Professor Pangadia to speak, and after that we want to spend about 20 minutes for question answer. We would request everyone who want to answer a question to send into the chat room. We already have received some questions, and I will be assisted by our Dr. Nirja Arun Gupta as a co-moderator. Dr. Gupta is Director of Institute for Indic and International Studies at Gujarat University and Principal of Bhavans College in Ahmedabad. And Dr. Nirja Arun Gupta also serves as Chair of Gopio Academic Council. So let us start with, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to present to you Professor Arvind Pangadia. Professor Pangadia.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for joining Professor Gupta, Mr. Menon, many friends from Jaipur, and all else. A very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. So the title of the book is New India, Reclaiming the Lost Glory. This is the book. Let me first say, what title refers to, the lost glory. What was that lost glory, and that the book advocates reclaiming. Then I'll come to New India, part of it. So if you look back the longer history, really long history, the first millennium, India accounted for almost 30% of the global income. It was the largest economy during that first millennium, from 1 year CE to 1,000 years CE. In this second millennium, it declined the share-wise, but it still remained very large. Until as late as 1700 CE, India was about 20% of the global economy. even until as recently as 1820, it was 16% of the global economy, and India and China throughout this period together accounted for about 50% of the global GDP. After that, under the British rule, India declined, but simultaneously, of course, Industrial Revolution happened, and so Europe, the United States, North America in general, they all grew relatively much faster than what happened in India. India almost kind of either remained stagnant or declined. So share-wise, of course, it really suffered. And at independence, we were not even 3% of the GDP, of the global GDP. So that's this sort of lost glory. And the book really lays out the case for why India is well poised now, well positioned now to reclaim that lost glory. It will still be a while, but certainly we are positioned to do that. New India. Now, post independence, of course, some authors have talked about the makers of modern India. So they use the term modern India for something that began after the independence. And there were the two projects, I would say broadly: the political project, which was setting up democracy, and then there was the economic project, which was to bring prosperity to the people, conquer poverty. Political project was successful, but I must say the economic project was quite unsuccessful. The kind of policies that we adopted were wrong policies, and as a proportion of the global economy, in fact, it turned out for at least till 1980, we continued to decline in share. We did grow somewhat, but we did not even grow during those 30 years, 1950 to 1980. Fast enough to actually keep up with the global economies. Our share actually continued to decline. The watershed year was 1991, when we changed the policies. And this is where I kind of, at least in my thinking, that's the beginning of what I would say New India. Narasimha Rao changed the policy framework entirely, from a controlled license permit Raj socialist model. We switched finally to the market economy, market model. It was a very gradual kind of process, and it's still ongoing. But the first time I used the term New India was in 2012, when I wrote sort of on the birthday of Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, or I think it was Prime Minister Vajpayee. I called those two actually the makers of modern India, or makers of New India, really, because modern India was already used by some of the historians for what happened after independence. So that's what I call New India. Switch to the market economy. So in my thinking, really, it's all about the economy. And of course, later on, Prime Minister Modi has used the same term, although in slightly different context. The context is the same, more or less, but perhaps more to the current period, not even beginning in 1991. But that's what we are talking about. And the question really is that, can India now really reclaim that lost glory? So first of all, let me say that, when you look at the first 30 to 40 years, we grew at an average of, about 3.5%, maybe less, certainly less than 4%, a decade of 5% growth in the 1980s, quite slow. I think the turning point in terms of faster growth comes around 2003-04. This was the last year of Prime Minister Vajpayee's 6 years. And that is the year we kind of, for the first time, we really switched to a significantly higher growth path. That particular year, we grew 8%. But if you take the full 17-year period from 2003-04 to 2019-20, this is a 17-year period, fairly long. We have grown about, on average, 7.4%. So there have been periods of ups and downs. And currently, because of COVID, we seem to have all this gloom, but we do not realize that, in fact, the first 4 years of Modi government, 2014-15 to 18-19, we actually grew 7.7%. And then we fell to 6.1, and then the last 19-20 was actually only 4.2%. And so we went into COVID with relatively weaker growth, and that had to do with the weakness in the financial sector. The credit had been expanded too rapidly and without due diligence, starting from about 2008 or so. And that eventually, of course, led to the accumulation of large number of non-performing assets, and that in my thinking was the main source of the decline in the growth rate to 4.2% finally in 2019-20. And so we went into COVID also with a relatively weak financial sector. But other than that fact, actually, the fundamentals of the economy were quite robust. And my view really has been that the decline in the growth rate was principally because people could not get to work. And so we have seen that decline in the current year as it ends, our financial year, which runs from April 1 to March 31. So we will end on March 31 probably with a growth rate of anywhere between 7.5% to 8% negative. So the GDP would have actually fallen. If we were expecting to grow, let's say, around even 5%, then that's a decline of more than just 7.5%. It becomes adding that 5%, almost 12 to 13% below where we should have been in this year. So it is a big hit, but it's almost entirely due to COVID. Going forward, what is what we have to look at now. In a way, the countries that have really transformed themselves in relatively short periods. In the past, if you look at the industrial history of Europe, the United States, Canada, and so forth, it took a very long time. It's almost a century that it took these countries to transform themselves. But in this post-Second World War era, as the previous colonies became independent and began to launch their development programs, some remarkable progress happened in some of the countries. What these Western countries had accomplished in 100 years, some of the countries really more or less came close to accomplishing in just 30 to 40 years. In particular, you have South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and China now. These are countries which really grew almost 10%, primarily, particularly South Korea, Taiwan, and China, primarily started out primarily agricultural, and very rapidly, the workforce transitioned from agriculture into industry and services within a matter of 3 to 4 decades. Korea is one example I can give you so that you get a sense of the numbers. In 1965, it had about 65 to 70% of its workforce in agriculture. By 1990, less than 20% was left in agriculture. And during those roughly 2.5 to 3 decades, South Korea grew about 9 to 10% a year. And that pretty much ended poverty, at least the extreme poverty was completely ended. And, South Korea was largely upper middle income country by then, by 1990. So very remarkable transformation. And the same thing happened in Taiwan and somewhat later from 1980 onwards in China. And China, of course, today is about 4 to 5 times of India's economy, both in GDP terms and in per capita terms, because it grew that rapidly. The same kind of transformation we have not been successful in doing. We certainly have turned the corner. We today, as I mentioned, we've grown about 7.4% over a period of 17 years, which is that, for that long a period, that is the highest any democracy certainly has grown on a sustained basis at that kind of growth rate. But my view is that we can do actually what some of these authoritarian regimes did within the democratic framework as well. And so what I think we are missing is about this 2.5% compared with the countries like South Korea, Taiwan, and China that grew, and Singapore that grew at about 9 to 10% per year. And that's the kind of transformation we need. We also need actually the workforce transformation. Now, again, to give you an idea why, just to get a sense of where the problem is, meaning that surely we have made huge bit of progress, and yet we are certainly nowhere near getting to levels where China is or China was even 10 to 15 years ago. We are about 2.6, 2.7 trillion. We'll certainly get to 10 trillion in another 15 to 20 years. But how do we get there faster? That really is the $1 million question, and that's what this book is about. In my thinking, in my analysis, this is the fundamental problem we need to solve. In spite of this growth that has happened, good bit of prosperity that has come alongside, good bit of decline in extreme poverty that has happened as well. And that has happened across the board. I think, some skeptics always continue to think that poverty has not fallen in certain groups, think like the scheduled castes or scheduled tribes or Muslims, etc. That all turns out to be completely wrong. Data are very, very clear. Whether you can take the scheduled castes, you can take the scheduled tribes, you can take Muslims, Hindus, Jains, Sikhs, any group you can take, any state you can take, everywhere the extreme poverty has definitely declined. Where we still are going very slow is in this transformation. In the end, transformation is all about moving your workforce out of agriculture into industry and services. Today, South Korea, like the agricultural workforce is no more than 5%. US is less than 2%. Any country with high per capita income, you would see the workforce basically moves into industry and services, and that of course also coincides with urbanization. You also become much more urban, and that is where India's challenge is. So today, if you look at where we are, about 42.5% of India's workforce still remains in agriculture. So let's say 43% remains in agriculture. Another 44% is in these enterprises that are in size less than 20 workers. And most of these are actually, most of these are in enterprises that are 5 workers or fewer. So we are effectively a nation of very tiny economic units. In farming, if you look at it, you got 70 million farms that are less than half hectare with an average size of less than a quarter hectare. Now, nobody can make a living for 4 or 5 people in the family on that kind of small farm. But that is the reality, that you got about half of the farms in India that are less than on average quarter hectare, and every one of those is less than half. Likewise, in industry and services, we are littered with these very small, tiny little enterprises. So as I mentioned, 42 and 43% of the workforce in agriculture, 44% in enterprises that are less than 20 workers. Most of these enterprises actually are, self-employment, meaning, husband and wife or their children, etc., running the enterprise, and that's pretty much it. They don't employ any regular workers on wages and so forth. But even those, that do employ some workers on a regular basis, they're too small to actually be very efficient. Remember that these such small enterprises operate in the domestic economy, probably within, doesn't get even past the state. If you're less than 20 workers, your market you're defining is not the global market. You're looking at, within maybe 100, 200 kilometer radius is where your market is. And that, of course, means generally associated with lower quality of product, low efficiency, and all that. If you really, so only about 10% of the workers in India today are in enterprises that are more than 20 workers, and 20 is not large by any means. To be large, you have to have at least 200, 300 kind of workers, those enterprises. And typically, really, if you look at China, almost 50% of its workforce in manufacturers in industry is in enterprises with more than 200 workers, 50%. Another 25% is 50 to 200, 50 to 199. That is the kind of enterprises that operate in the global economy, compete against the best in the world. We just saw the most remarkable cricket match, right? The kind of cricket team that India has produced. And this is not even its A team, it was B or probably C team that just played fantastically in Australia. This goes to tell you that, when you operate in the global kind of competition, play test cricket and so forth on a very regular basis, you produce fantastic players. And not just 2 or 3 of those, but you produce, in dozens. And that's what happens in economics also, in enterprises. If you operate in the global economy, then you produce real big winners. And that is what India is lacking. So that's one part of the problem, that our presence in the global economy, that in turn is connected to this small enterprises problem. Now in certain sectors, you can argue technology will force you to be a little bit larger. So where India has presence, auto industry, two-wheelers, pharmaceuticals, IT industry, machinery industry, technology forces you a little bit of scale. But these are not the sectors which provide a lot of employment to the workers. So they cannot serve as the engine for this transformation of the workforce, leaving agriculture, coming into industry and services. They employ very few workers at the end of the day. Every single country which I have named, Korea, Taiwan, China, etc., which has actually achieved this transformation rapidly, have done very well in what we call the labor-intensive industries. Things like apparel, clothing industry, footwear, furniture, all sorts of light manufacturers, everyday needs, kitchenware, umbrellas, you name it, all the light manufacture items. They are what provide for a small amount of investment, a lot of employment and good work and good employment, employment at decent wages. Currently, because these are all very tiny in Indian enterprises, in all these labor-intensive sectors are relatively very small. They don't operate in the global economy. They're not the most efficient ones. And therefore, they also provide relatively low-wage employment. Data are very clear on that. And that's something I document in the book very systematically. And that is the specific problem that going forward, India really needs to solve. And that is where the bulk of my book provides the roadmap. And I think, don't have the time to go over it, but I'll just briefly mention in a couple of minutes. First of all, externally, we need to be a lot more open. We did start opening our economy to trade and foreign investment. On foreign investment, we are very open, and that opening has continued progressively under every single administration since 1991. We have opened to foreign investment. On trade also, we opened, but I think after 2007, we stopped doing that. And in the last 3 years, we have had a reversal. The present government, the Modi government, which has otherwise done some of the mega reforms that I've been writing for the last 20 years, labor law reforms, farm reforms, cut in the corporate profit tax, GST, the insolvency and bankruptcy code. So some of the big reforms that we have been asking for have not been done. But on one front, the external trade, they have gone in the reverse. And that is a bad sign. I think, we cannot not be open and get to 10%. To get to 10%, we will have to be open. So that's one very important policy measure that we need to take. And that opening up has many dimensions, which I will not go into in the presentation. Anybody interested, we can come back to that. Then some of the big reforms that we needed, labor ones, almost done. In this September last parliamentary session, there were 30 different labor laws in India, just at the central level, and then you got another 150 at the state level. But really the big problem was the central government laws, 30 of them, but they have been replaced by 4 new codes, which really more or less clean up the thing. There is one thing for which the central government has given the powers to the states, and states will need to do that. And that has to do with the right to terminate workers. Currently under the revised law, only enterprises with 300 workers or less can have the right to lay off their workers depending on what the demand happens to be, or some worker is not behaving or something, then you need the ability to terminate them. But currently only enterprises up to 300 workers have it. Central government has given the authority to the state governments that they can, through notification, change that. But I think state governments will need to take that action. Land is an area which has remained largely unreformed. Some things have happened, but this is something that the states have to do most of it. Now, particularly because urbanization ties into land issues. So there are issues of rental laws, issues of how tall the buildings can be. We all live, those of us who live in New York City know, in the last 150 years, New York City has been built and rebuilt about 6 to 7 times. Because, as technology improves and all, taller and taller buildings, and the needs arise, taller and taller buildings come in. So you can accommodate, you can create urban spaces. In India, we don't allow taller buildings. That's one of the land problems, but number of land related problems, conversion of land, every city expands by converting agricultural land on the periphery into urban land. And our laws are very bad. It becomes very difficult to do the conversion. There has to be. So number of those things, some bit of tax reforms, financial sector needs to be fixed up as well. And currently the immediate need as we get out of COVID is to recapitalize the banks. The government is aware of that. I've written very extensively on that subject. It's a well-known issue. So that recapitalization will need to be done. Privatization, another very big, we have too many enterprises, too much of manufacturing activity happening in the public sector where capital is not being used efficiently. They all need to be privatized so that their productivity may rise. And so that's another one. Tax stability, very, very important. You can't be changing your tax policy, and the fear of being taxed retroactively, etc. You need to take care of that. So that's a set of things. Then there are issues of higher education, on which I have a very long chapter where we need some reforms as well. And there are some governance related reforms which I talk about in the book. So that's roughly the kind of overview of the book. I think we can take up more in the Q&A. So thank you very much. Thanks, Thomas.
Thomas, unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself.
Thomas, unmute yourself.
Thomas, you
Unmute.
Thank you, Professor Panagardia. You really gave a lot of insight into India's economic future. You touched upon many aspects of Indian economic growth. So we are going to take some questions. I'm going to make these questions very brief, and hopefully we'll also have brief answer, because we want to take as many questions as we can. We have about 15 minutes to go through this. In the meanwhile, if you have a question, please send it through the chat room. Our co-moderator, Dr. Neerja Arun Gupta, will compile it, and she will moderate it after I finish the first 2 questions. So
can we not ask straight away?
No, no, not straight away. We'll take the questions. Okay, we already got some questions, and Dr. Nirja Arun Gupta is going to compile all the questions so that we don't have repetitions. Okay, Professor Pangadia, first of all, um, please touch upon, does the setback on the global economy due to COVID, would it dim India's future economic growth? And second thing is, it was sent by Sridhar Menon. What reform agenda can be implemented in the next 12 to 18 months to pave the way for economic growth in the coming decade? I combined these two because these are similar. Professor Pangadia?
Yeah. So one, I don't think the COVID itself by itself dims India's chances. I mean, I personally have been saying that post-COVID decades, India has the ability to grow 9 to 10%. Our main issue is get the vaccines going very quickly so that people can return to work. There's very clear evidence now that the reason the growth dipped was because people simply could not be at work once they are at work, and recovery has happened as people have returned to work. So that part is very clear. Now for the next 12 to 18 months, what should the government do? I'll just I said about 3 or 4 things I have pointed out. One, recapitalization of banks is extremely important. You do not want, in year 16-17, the credit growth had actually collapsed because of the NPAs. These NPAs will rise again because, as we come out of COVID, there will be bankruptcies. And so recapitalization of the banks, extremely important measure that needs to be taken. Second, I think we do need to open up the economy and reverse some of this protection that we have introduced in the last 3 years or so, but go further down. It's simply not reversal, but we need to go. On average, current tariff rates are 14%. In some sectors like automobile, 125%, two-wheelers, 40-50%, toys, 60%. That is not the right, that too high a protection needs to come down. So that's the second thing I would do. Third, privatization. This is very much doable agenda. Cabinet has actually, given its approval since 2016. So at least 3 dozen public sector enterprises have already been given go ahead. It is simply a bureaucratic inertia which has caused it. I mean, I've called actually for the Prime Minister to, reinvent this disinvestment ministry. What Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Prime Minister Vajpayee, was very successful in privatization, and he did it by having a separate ministry of disinvestment. I think that ought to be really revived. So those are the things that can be done fairly rapidly in the next 12 to 18 months. And one more thing actually that the states can do, and that's another pitch, powers to the enterprises. States can now simply issue a notification and say that, and raise that limit from 300 to, I would say, 10,000 workers. We need large enterprises. How else do we expect the enterprises that are a lot of multinationals that are moving out of China to come into India? We want them to come to India, but you need proper labor laws, and you need good, land prices also. But on land, the government can work more directly with the enterprises, but labor laws have to be fixed, and that's something that the states can do.
Yeah, this was another question which Sridhar raised about privatization. The government of India, are they quite serious about monetizing government of India owned assets and increase efficiency through privatization of more than 30 state-owned enterprises, Air India being the first? And any comments on that?
Yeah, on the part of the government, there is every seriousness. Actually, even before I left Niti Aayog in 2017, I wrote the first report actually on privatization of Air India. And then at the bureaucratic level, it got kind of, changed, meaning that, I was of the view that allow foreign investors to buy it and 100% you disinvest. And, a lot of the debt the government should keep, take it off Air India and make, therefore, Air India attractive and all. So I think this all got botched as the the thing moved through the and finally when they tried it, they put it they said government will still keep 25% stake. That's a recipe for deterring the buyers from buying. Anyway, now it's fully, they've gone back to the original plan, which more or less what I had recommended, and that got mired a bit in COVID, but that will happen. Air India, I think, is very much underway, but a lot more has to happen, and I think it can be done. I mean, create this investment ministry, it's doable.
How about other manufacturing industries, which the government?
No, that's what I meant, public sector enterprises. Look, there are many enterprises which are listed on the stock market in which the government has only 60% stake or less. So all you need to do is 10 percentage point or less of the shares, just sell them on the market. There is no transparency problem either. You can even adopt a rule that every month we'll unload 2 percentage points of these shares. And in 5 or 6 months, it's off your books. You can bring in a private board and all, because once your ownership of the state falls below 50%, you can appoint a private board. So I think very much doable.
Dr. Thomas,
am I muted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay. Well, one more question before I ask Dr. Neerja Arungupta to come in. Can India, in conjunction with state governments, initiate and implement reforms in the manufacturing and construction sectors to create about 80 to 90 million non-farm jobs by 2030? Can you name 3 most important reforms you would recommend? How can we get each state to champion its own sectors to propel growth? Can the central, state, and business leaders work together in concert to achieve India's high growth imperative?
So I've named a number of these things for the states. If the states want to do, clearly one is labor, one which I have mentioned already. Land is also a state. Land is also a state. And a number of things on land you can do, but one simple one is to make it. I think Karnataka has moved on this. You just make the conversion of agricultural land into non-agricultural or alternative uses type of land flexible, very flexible, so that the cities can expand on the periphery, which is where the industry comes and locates itself. And that's how you also, I would, this is a tougher one, but they need to raise the what we call the floor space index, meaning they need to allow the buildings from becoming buildings to become taller and taller. I mean, look at South Bombay; it's a disaster. The floor space index is about 1.3 in South Bombay. How can you have such low-rise buildings? And also we have the perverse pattern of this floor space index. Usually it's in the center of the city, central business district is where you want to have a very high floor space index. Allow 30 stories, 50, 40 stories. In the center of the city, we keep them low, and on the periphery, we allow some high rises. It's completely backwards. You want the reverse. So that's another, land related. There are a number of other things that I mentioned in the book. And if the states will do that, and the third, of course, if in the rural countryside also, I would like to have a proper tenancy law, because there needs to be consolidation of land, which will then free up workers to move to industry and services. From these tiny holdings, there is not, you cannot make a living on that. If there is a proper tenancy law, or if there are proper laws that allow them to sell the land for alternative purposes also, then workers can basically monetize their land and move forward. So
I will now bring in Dr. Neerja Arungupta. She's a professor, director of International Institute for India and International Studies at Gujarat University, and she is also principal of Bhavan's College. She has compiled all the questions which have come from the chat room. And Dr. Arun Gupta is also the chair of our GoPio Academic Council. Dr. Arun Gupta, Nirjaji.
I must say good morning, Dr. Pangaya. I'm sure your exposition has triggered many questions. And to start with the first question, I have combined Dr. Asha Samanji's and Mr. Ravi Dhingra question, which is judiciously on farmers' issue. So the question is that with the new laws and with the farmers' protests, does it look like it matches with the development and globalization issues, or they are handled well enough, or they could have been handled in a better way? Your comments on this issue.
So I your second part of the question is political, and I would stay away from answering that. The laws were required. I mean, there has been a whatever consensus on that. Everybody has been on board. There's hardly anybody either among economists or intellectuals or political parties who has at one or the other time not endorsed them. After the fact, some people have changed their minds. But you tell me one single country. At least I'm not aware of any country actually where you tell the farmer that here is my government mandi and this is the only mandi in which you can sell your produce. What country has that law? This was started by the British actually when they were trying to acquire cotton for the Manchester mills in 1886 or somewhere there back there, in the 19th century. That's where it started. Then, of course, there was a Agriculture Produce Marketing Commission or something that in 1928, which gave a report, and also it's for 90 years the regime that we have had has been there in place since that commission, 1928 commission. Even before independence, a lot of these states have created these state laws under which we created these monopolized mandis of the state government. Now, there was a reasonable reason at that time, but times have changed. Just as in education, UGC is not the right institution for India. But that is at least a 1950s institution. This is 1920s institution or 1930s institution. So you need to allow the farmer to produce, to sell. No other product has that kind of requirement that you sell it only to the government. So I think that the reforms that have been brought on, and it was initiated. The discussion started in 2000. In 2003, there was a Model APMC Act, which was put in place. And for 17 years, every government that followed, Vajpayee government started, then the UPA tried to move it forward, tried to encourage states and so forth. Then Modi government tried to do the same thing. Finally, when it didn't happen, not enough progress happened, then the government said, okay, we use the powers that the constitution gives the central government, and therefore the central government brought the laws. So absolutely, I think these are long overdue reforms. The government has been absolutely right in putting them in place, and it's not something that happened overnight. This is an effort ongoing for 17 years.
The next question is, though you have mentioned in your talk, but as a question form is about the underperforming loans of the bank. How bad do you think they are holding back the development or the growth of the country? And the question comes from Mr. Vimal Goelji.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Non-performing loans, the underpaid loans or underperforming loans, NPAs basically.
Yeah. What is the question about it?
So the question is how bad they are for the growth of the country. So of course you have touched it, but then.
No. I mean, I've said this that fundamentally the Indian economy is sound, but for this one particular problem, which is the NPAs. And
can I explain my question a little bit?
I think won't take. We can ask personally.
So financial sector weakness was the main one, And that had spilled over into also non-bank finance companies and so forth, but the financial sector in general, that requires strengthening. Some cleaning up has happened, and the IBC process is on. I think IBC process needs to be strengthened yet further, and recapitalization will have to be done.
A question from Mr. Akshat Singh. It's about the informal sector and also about the shadow economy. How do they contribute immensely to the workforce? So what should be the policy or any directives to bring the sector into the mainstream?
Totally. That is the million-dollar question, that how do we do that? And that's what the book is about. There have been so many restrictions. I mean, we are a country, we love the small. And in many dimensions, I gave you only two, the small farms and the small enterprises. But there are other areas in which the problem prevails as well. Yes, all the reforms we are talking about, and paying particular attention to the problems of the labor-intensive sectors. You see, one big difference between India and the other fast-growing economies like South Korea, Taiwan, China, etc., at different points in time, they've all slowed down now, is that the labor-intensive sectors did very well in those countries. Labor-intensive sectors in India have done very poorly. What we have done is to go straight, because of all the restrictive policies that we introduced, number of them, there's a whole history. And for that, you have to read my earlier book, 2008, India, the Emerging Giant. That whole slew of policies which pushed the economy into specializing into these highly capital-intensive and skilled labor-intensive sectors. And these are auto parts, machinery sector, chemical industry, IT industry, petroleum refining, big in refining and all. So these sectors don't employ very many workers. And what has happened as a result, that these sectors have soaked up all the capital. In the end, we are a poor, we're not a very rich country, so the capital is limited. And when the capital mostly is absorbed by all these capital-intensive sectors, then in the rest of the labor-intensive sectors, you got these very tiny little enterprises because they have not enough capital to get the scale. And so there needs to be both the availability of capital for these enterprises, but also the other policies, openness, the labor laws, electricity prices have to be reasonable, because that's another constraint that can happen. So various reforms that I've talked about, and allow these enterprises to grow larger. That's how you'll create in the labor-intensive sectors.
There's one interlude question from Mr. Shivendra Sofat, is about your comments on corruption. Corruption is the biggest problem, how to tackle that so that it doesn't hinder the growth. Any small comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, first, it's not a foregone conclusion. China was still is a very corrupt country. South Korea was an incredibly corrupt country. So it's not that, I hesitate a little bit, because you see, if ending corruption would actually lead all the officers to begin then doing their work honestly, that's fantastic, But typically what will happen is that when you clamp down on the officers, they stop doing the work. And so the clearances then slow down yet more. I mean, in a way, that expression we use, that greasing the palm, that's about moving things forward, So if the culture is one in which, we think that just because I hold the post, I'm entitled to collect some money for it. If that is your culture, then there are two alternatives. You accept it for a while. I would not get overly concerned. I think, there is a moral and ethical issue for which I worry, But on the economic front, I would wait just a little longer I think as we grow richer, much of the bad corruption will go away. Much of the corruption that impacts our lives on a daily basis, that'll go away. And a lot of this also is going away, by the way, through digitization. On that front, I didn't mention, but digitization is moving extremely rapidly in India. I think that's something that is absolutely, and those of you who live in India should probably know it a lot better than I. That's so many government services that for which you have to go and stand in a queue, you no longer have to. And so that is cutting corruption. See, what happens is that where the corruption gets cut off, we don't see that because that's gone. So we are not aware of that even. I mean, think of the license permit, Raj, you even for a scooter that you wanted to get, or a car you wanted to get, or a telephone you wanted to get, either you have to wait in the queue for 10 years, or you have to go and, give somebody some money, or buy in black, or whatever, break some law. All of that is gone. So one way to attack corruption would then be, see creatively where the government regulation exists, which is unnecessary, and all it does is to open the opportunities for the officers to make money on that. Remove the regulations. Keep only regulations that, of course, improve the efficiency and the lives of the people. That's how I would go. Because some of the corruption will have to, with rising incomes. I mean, simple things. These days, like the cops, which they used to catch you even on a bicycle. I remember when I was young, the cops will catch you and then try to extract a rupee out of you or something like that. But not because the incomes have gone up, nobody actually tries to extract that small bribe, and those bribes will go away with rising incomes.
Nirjaji, take one more question from you.
Okay. This comes from Indus TV Vijay Gargi, and I would like to join this question with Anju ji because they all go for the same fervor. This is about startups, innovation, and entrepreneurship. In your opinion, what government policies would encourage them, or government should do to encourage these in the country?
So India's, I mean, it's not my area of specialization, but I do talk to people who, people in Bangalore, Hyderabad, and so forth. And from what I understand, India's startup ecosystem is actually one of the best ones around the world, and we are producing our reasonably fair share of the unicorns and so forth, and a number of what they call sunicorns and all. And the government has done a lot of things. Even when I was at Niti Aayog, we were doing some of these, incubators and so forth under Atal Innovation Mission, and then the Science and Technology Department does its part as well. Largely, I would say, the government should be out of the way of the entrepreneurs if it can keep out of their way. I think in that space we got people who are doing excellent work. My only kind of regret or sort of one weakness of the system I see is that the startup ecosystem is producing only in sort of app-based kind of activities. None of our startups are they scale up on manufacturing side particularly. A lot of innovation I see, if you like see what Dr. Mashelkar, Ramesh Mashelkar kind of writes and does himself, a lot of innovation, low cost innovation, a lot of it, he'll tell you a number of things, on all sorts of medical tests, this, that, and the other. But they never scale up, you see, and globally to succeed in the end, you have to be able to scale it up and become the global player. That's where we seem not to succeed very much. In some we have, but these are all app-based kind of, OYO and Baiju, and there are a number of these, unicorns that we have produced.
Thank you, Nirjaji. I think we kept to time, and one last question which I have received, that is, what kind of reforms would you recommend spanning capital markets, credit intermediation, and public finances to raise 2.5 trillion by 2030, for example? This is a question again from Sridhar Menon.
Wait a minute, 2.5 trillion meaning
By 2030, for example.
no, the 2.5 trillion is referring to revenues, or the GDP is
No,
already more than
the-
2.5 trillion.
Spanning for capital markets, credit intermediation, and public finances to raise 2.5 million. How will we go?
Oh, so this is about the credit. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, well, then for that, the privatization of banks has to be an integral part of it. I also think, contrary to many others who have written, I have a different view on this, that there was a internal working group of the Reserve Bank of India, which made a lot of very good suggestions to bring more capital into banking. And one of those was that allow the non-financial corporations to have the banks. There's been a lot of criticism of that recommendation. I personally think that we ought to do that. On 3rd February, there will be an article in the Times of India that should be coming, where I make that case that we need to do that. A lot of technological advancement is happening in fintech, and so therefore a lot of the telecommunication giants like Airtel, Jio, etc., you have to allow them to have banks. Otherwise, you will be left behind in this innovation. So banking, number of these things. You need to allow more people to come into banking, and you need to privatize the current public sector banks. Now, not all of them can be privatized, but certainly, start at least. I mean, this should actually fall even into Sridhar's 12 to 18 month agenda. It should fall into that. That look, that the government today has 12 banks. The bottom 6 of these account for only 15% of the banking assets in the public sector. Only 15%. The government can let private sector take over these 6 banks, and that will bring in new players, more dynamic players, and so forth. So you can expand, and then gradually also go at least several of those remaining 6. So that's the banking. Now, the other side of the capital markets, which is in particular, I think on equity, we are doing okay. We're not doing sparklingly well. But regulation is, I think, overly tight in India, both on the banking side, but particularly on the capital market side. So I'm not an expert on that, but everybody I talk to, I get the very strong sense that that's something, in the regulation is keeping Indian equity markets from expanding at a much faster pace, particularly the new IPOs. They're doing okay, not badly. Where we are doing much more poorly is the corporate bond market. That in India, almost all of it is, actually even equity, the larger part of it, both equity and the debt markets are private, meaning private equity and private issues in corporate bond market. Publicly traded is where we need to enlarge much more, and a whole host of, so the number of suggestions that I have in the book on what we can try to do with corporate bond market. I mean, one of the things you have to do is allow these pension funds and so forth to invest to some degree. You see, when you force the regulate so tightly that they can only invest in AAA rated or the best, then you're not giving proper return to the eventual retirees also. Those funds then don't give the returns that people really ought to get on their savings and all. I think security is important, but you can overdo security sometimes, and which is what we overdo security in these matters. And then there is the life insurance company, in the end, that needs to be listed. The government has already announced that it is on its agenda. It's a very tough thing to do because of a number of problems there. But at least start list it, and then unload 1 to 2% of its equity. At least start that. So the transparency also will improve if you list it, because a lot of the things that still have not been done for the life insurance company the government-owned one, will have to be done once they try to list it. Listing requires to bring a lot of the things in public domain, and that needs to be done. So these are some of the steps. And again, I'm by no means an expert on capital markets either.
Thank you, Professor Pangadia. Let's all give a big clapping. I think that's all we can do. Also want to, Professor Pangadia has been very kind since he joined Columbia. He attended and gave talks to many of our chapters, Gopio Central Jersey, Gopio Connecticut. Thank you, really appreciate enlightening us with the economic trend and what India can achieve. Really appreciate your time, and we have learned a lot. Really appreciate that. I also want to mention about our Gopio Academic Council. Dr. Nirja Arun Gupta, she's the chair of that. If there are any academic person present here, please do contact her, because we want to expand the Academic Council with all academics present around the world. Now we are going to go into the celebration mode, our Republic Day, which is 3 days from now. And it also happens to be, today happens to be the birth anniversary of Subhash Chandra Bose. And also we can celebrate the victory of Team India in the cricket test series in Australia. So we have combined 3 celebrations today. We start the program soon. Before I introduce our MC, I want to recognize some of our other Gopio officials present here who joined later. Mr. Ishwar Ram Lachman from South Africa. He is our Executive Vice President. Neeraj Bakshi is the chairman of our Gopio International Chamber of Commerce. Mr. John Isaac from Dubai. He is our global ambassador. Then we have 2 international coordinators, Johnny Kurivala from Middle East and Bala Gopal from India or South Asia. Then our associate secretary, Jaswant Modi, and our area coordinator for Los Angeles area, Mr. Ashok Madan. And then we have Suman Kapoor from New Zealand. Thank you, Suman, for getting up early to come and attend this program. She is our co-chair of Gopio's Senior Council. So we go with, I also wanted to specially recognize Vijay Garg. Vijay Garg has been our host and technology person, and Mr. Munish Gupta from Delhi. Vijay Garg has been live streaming this program through Indus TV, and Munish Gupta, our live member, have been active in Gopio for a long time. He was from day one, and he is live streaming through PIO TV. He told me that a lot of response people have been watching. Anyway, thank you, Munish. Okay, so now we go to the program for the celebration. MC is Nandita Kotian. She is a member of Gopio Connecticut for more than 10 years, and currently she serves as a board member. She had taken leadership in several Gopio Connecticut events. She spearheaded the Indian community's participation in the 2013 annual Thanksgiving Day Parade. Nandita, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are joining us from. Just as a housekeeping rule, I request everyone to please keep your mics on mute through the event. First of all, I would like to wish all of you a very happy Republic Day, also known as Ganatantra Divas. I also thank you all for joining us globally. The 26th of January is an important day for Indians. On this day, back in 1950, our great constitution was formed. We assemble globally on this platform provided by Gopio with great pride about India being the largest democracy in the world. We belong to a land that is the epitome of unity in diversity. Keeping the spirit of this joyous occasion, I would like to invite Pallavi Balwariar to open the celebrations with the patriotic song Vande Mataram. Pallavi Varma Balwariar is a classically trained singer who had immersed herself in vocal music at a very young age. Inspired and trained by her mother and gurus, Pallavi sings classical bandishes, bhajans, and semi-classical songs. Pallavi Balwaria, over to you.
Namaste and hello to everyone who have tuned into from different parts of the world today. My name is Pallavi and I'm from New Jersey, USA. I'm going to sing a patriotic song, Vande Mataram, in Rag Des. Hope you would like my rendition of the song. Vande Mataram. Vande Mataram. Sujalam Shukalam Malaya Jashitalam Sashashamalam Mataram Vande. Sujalam Shukalam Malaya Jashitalam Sashashamalam Mataram Vande. Mataram. Shubhra Jyotsa Pulikita Yaminim Pulla Kusumita Damadala Shobinim Suhasinim Sumadhura Bhashinim Sukharam Varanam Mataram Vande Mataram. Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram. Sapta Koti Kanta, Kala Kala Ninad Karane, Shapta Koti, Pujai Vita Kara Karavane, Sapta Koti Kanta, Kala Kala Ninad Karane, Shapta Koti, Pujai Vita Kara Karavane, Abola Kinamaya Bali, Bahubali Varinim, Namami Tarinim, Vipudanya Varinim, Mataram Vande, Mataram. Mataram, Tvam hi Durga Dasha Praharana Dharini Kamala Kamala Dala Viharini Vani Vidyadayini Namami Tvam Namami Kamalam Amalam Matulam Sujalam Chukalam Mataram Shamalam Saralam Shushmitam Bhushitam Dharanim Dharanim Mataram Vande Mataram. Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi ji, for the beautiful rendition. It certainly added to the patriotic spirit. I take great pride in inviting Gopio International President Sunny Kulatakal from Bahrain to deliver the welcome remarks at the Republic Day message. Over to Mr. Kulatakal, please.
At the outset, I take this opportunity to appreciate Gopio Chairman Dr. Thomas Abraham for arranging a very relevant Zoom meeting with Padma Shri Dr. Aravind Panagaria regarding New India Reclaiming the Lost Glory. Gopio Life members, Lord Rami Ranger, and many other Gopio Life members and VIPs will be from different parts of the world are attending this meeting. I will be very brief in my message. This celebration of Indian Republic Day is an open acknowledgement of our Indianness. Even when you take an Indian out of India, you cannot take out the Indianness from him. We are Indians because India lives in us. The Indian diaspora has become a powerful global force for ideas and for social and economic progress. Overseas Indians are at the forefront of science and technology, in human development, and in intellectual and business leadership, which has often focused on those at the bottom of the pyramid. Several nations, especially Gulf countries, are supported by the work ethic of our labor, which also provides remittances back to India. Overseas Indians have spread the Indian ethos and values in hundreds of countries across the world. Global Organization of People of Indian Origin played a crucial role in this regard. Mahatma Gandhi's return to India a century ago marked a turning point in India's destiny and in world history. Indians who remained abroad are increasingly contributing to India in different ways. It is an affirmation of faith in India and loyalty to the motherland. Overseas Indians have confidence in the future of India as a world leader, and they are willing to pursue together the stupendous task of bringing prosperity and peace to India's 1.3 billion people. They can contribute with their intellect, training, and technology, with their management skills, with their global experience, and their commitment to progress. Let this Republic Day be an occasion for the overseas Indians to dedicate their service to India. We have to bring forth our best to serve the nation with commitment. India has the privilege of being a great civilization. Today, it is the world's largest democracy, and its people have the commitment to fulfill the promise of it being a great nation. As our tricolor flutters high in the sky, let each one of us take a pledge to bring glory to India and take our country to its destination of becoming a great nation that stands for human values. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kulatakal. It truly is an honor to have you amidst our presence. And now for the youngest special guest of the occasion, we have an Indian-American youngster, Anjo Teratil, who would give a perspective from a PIO youth on Republic Day of India. Anjo is an 11th grader from Connecticut who is involved in various extracurricular activities, including Model Congress, Model UN, and robotics. Let's have the spotlight on Anjo Teratil.
Thank you for the introduction. Namaste, distinguished guests, aunties, uncles, and my friends. I am proud and honored to speak on the commemoration of the 72nd Indian Republic Day. The day celebrates the birth of the world's largest sovereign, socialist, and secular democratic republic. Throughout India, there are countless parades, and the grandest of all parades is held on the Rajpath in New Delhi. On August 15th, 1947, when India got freedom from British rule, Jawaharlal Nehru, in his speech, said, "A new star rises, the star of freedom in the East. A new hope comes into being, a vision long cherished materializes. May the star never set, and that hope never be betrayed." My dear friends, the star that was born on that day has become brighter and brighter year after year. When India became a free nation, a lot of work needed to be done in order for the country to be governed by a constitution. The road to success is in the foundation that was laid by the Indian Constitution 71 years ago on January 24th, 1950. The Constitution would officially come into effect on January 26th of the same year. You might wonder why. On January 26th, 1930, the Indian National Congress decided to demand complete freedom from the British. The Indian Constitution is the world's longest written constitution, containing 395 parts, 22 articles, and 12 schedules. On January 24th, 1950, at a special session of the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the first president of independent India. Dr. Prasad took the oath as president in a ceremony at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. He said, "It is a great day for our country. At no period, even during the most glorious era of which we have record, was this whole country brought under one constitution and one rule." Our 11th president, Dr. Abdul Kalam, said to the youth of India, "You have to dream before your dreams can come true." With his Vision India 2020, he laid the foundation for taking the country forward, where young Indians have to take control and make sure this earth is a livable and peaceful place. He urged the young men and women to not lose hope and courage. Success can only come by courageous devotion to the task at hand. As John F. Kennedy famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." It is the people that make the country a great nation with their hard work, dedication, entrepreneurship, and contribution to society. My dear friends, we have to be proud of the history, heritage, and culture of India. Let us stand together, uphold our values, and work together towards a common goal of building a better India. Jai Hind.
Anju, I'm sure all of us present here are confident that you will shine in your future endeavors and achieve great success in life. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
And now, continuing the musical journey, I would like to introduce Mr. Pradeep Parekh. Pradeep Parekh is a musician, singer, and composer of Bollywood family. He has a recording studio in New York by the name of Taptak Music Recording Studio. Pradeep ji will be singing "Jis Desh Mein Ganga Behti Hai," followed by "Aisa Desh Hai Mera." Over to you, Pradeep ji.
Thank you, Nandita ji. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Ravin ji. होठों पे सच्चाई रहती है, जहाँ दिल में सफाई रहती है। हम इस देश के वासी है, हम उस देश के वासी है, जिस देश में गंगा बहती है। होठों पे सच्चाई रहती है, जहाँ दिल में सफाई रहती है। हम उस देश के वासी है, हम उस देश के वासी है, जिस देश में गंगा बहती है। महिमा जो हमारा होता है, जो जान से प्यारा होता है। महिमा जो हमारा होता है, वो जान से प्यारा होता है। ज्यादा की नहीं लालच हमको, थोड़े में गुजारा होता है, थोड़े में गुजारा होता है। बच्चों के लिए जो धरती माँ सदियों से सभी कुछ कहती है, हम उस देश के वासी है, हम उस देश के वासी है, जिस देश में गंगा बहती है। कुछ लोग जो ज्यादा जानते हैं, इंसान को कम पहचानते हैं। कुछ लोग जो ज्यादा जानते हैं, इंसान को कम पहचानते हैं। ये पूरब है, पूरब वाले हर जान की कीमत जानते हैं, हर जान की कीमत जानते हैं। मिलजुल के रहो और प्यार करो, एक चीज यही जो रहती है। हम उस देश के वासी है, हम उस देश के वासी है, जिस देश में गंगा बहती है। जो जिससे मिला सीखा हमने, गैरों को भी अपनाया हमने। जो जिससे मिला सीखा हमने, गैरों को भी अपनाया हमने। मतलब के लिए अंधे होकर रोटी को नहीं पूजा हमने, रोटी को नहीं पूजा हमने। अब हम तो क्या सारी दुनिया से कहती है, हम उस देश के वासी है, हम उस देश के वासी है, इस देश में गंगा बहती है। दिल पे सच्चाई रहती है, जहाँ दिल में सफाई रहती है। हम उस देश के वासी है, हम उस देश के वासी है, जिस देश में गंगा बहती है। जय हिंद। घर पर हेटा धरती वसदी, हर रुत हसदी किन्ना सोना देश है मेरा, देश है मेरा, देश है मेरा। किन्ना सोना देश है मेरा, देश है मेरा, देश है मेरा। धरती सुनहरी अंबर नीला हो, धरती सुनहरी अंबर नीला, हर मौसम रंगीला। ऐसा देश है मेरा, हो ऐसा देश है मेरा, ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा। बोले पपीहा कोयल गाए हो, बोले पपीहा कोयल गाए, सावन गिर के आए। ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा, ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा। गेहूं के खेतों में कंजी जो करे हवाएं, रंग बिरंगी कितनी चुनरिया उड़ उड़ जाए। पनघट पर पनहारन जब घघरी भरने आए, मधुर मधुर तानों में कहीं बंसी कोई बजाए, तो सुन लो कदम कदम पर है मिल जानी हो, कदम कदम पर है मिल जानी कोई प्रेम कहानी। ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा, ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा। मेरी जुगनी ते चांदे बनते जुगनी और दुमके ढंपे, मुंफा का इसके जगरी मनोई जगानियां टूटी है, टूटी मोदी को माँ सही बात कहती है।
ओ दिल कट देता है जिंद मेरी,
बाप के कंधे चढ़ के जहाँ बच्चे देखे मेले, मेलों में लटके तमाशे कुल्फी चाट के ठेले। कहीं मिलती मीठी गोली, कहीं चूरन की है चुड़िया, भोले भाले बच्चे हैं जैसे गुड्डे और गुड़िया, और इनको रोज सुनाए दादी नानी हो, रोज सुनाए दादी नानी एक परियों की कहानी। ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा, ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा। सदके सदके जान दिए मुटवारी नी, कंधा जुपा फिर चेर नारी जागे की, ओए ये नंदा छुपा फिर चेर बाके नारी नी। कौन कहे तेरा कांड राम टियारी जी, कौन सहे तेरी पीड़ बाकी नारे दी, ये कौन चाहे वर पीर बाके नारे की। ओ मेरे देश में मेहमानों को भगवान कहा जाता है, को यही का हो जाता है जो कहीं से भी आता है। तेरे देश को मैंने देखा, तेरे देश को मैंने जाना, ओ तेरे देश को मैंने देखा, तेरे देश को मैंने जाना, जाने क्यों ये लगता है मुझको जाना पहचाना। यहाँ भी वही शाम है वही सवेरा हो, वही शाम है वही सवेरा, ऐसा ही देश है मेरा जैसा देश है तेरा, हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा ऐसा देश है तेरा, देश है मेरा देश है मेरा,
ऐसा देश है मेरा,
हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा, हाँ जैसा देश है तेरा,
जैसा देश है मेरा,
हाँ ऐसा देश है मेरा। जय हिंद, वंदे मातरम।
Thank you, Pradeep ji, for that soulful performance. Thank you so much. Introducing our next singer, Mr. Srinivas Gunupuru. He has a passion for performing Bollywood, old and new English European songs. He sang for TV commercials through Mudra Communications Agency in Mumbai. He worked with music arranger Louis Banks and advertising music. Srinivas ji will be singing "Ae Mere Pyare Watan," followed by "Mera Rang De Basanti Chola." Over to you, Srinivas ji.
ऐ मेरे प्यारे वतन, ऐ मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। ऐ मेरे प्यारे वतन, ऐ मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। ऐ मेरे प्यारे वतन, ऐ मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम, तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम। चूम लूं मैं उस जुबां को जिस पे आए तेरा नाम, सबसे प्यारी सुबह तेरी, सबसे रंगी तेरी शाम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। छोड़ कर तेरी ज़मीं को दूर आ पहुँचे हैं हम, छोड़ कर तेरी ज़मीं को दूर आ पहुँचे हैं हम। फिर भी है ये ही तमन्ना तेरे ज़र्रों की कसम, हम जहाँ पैदा हुए उस जगह ही निकले दम, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तू ही मेरी आरज़ू, तू ही मेरी आबरू, तू ही मेरी जान। ऐ मेरे प्यारे वतन, ऐ मेरे बिछड़े चमन, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान, तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। तुझ पे दिल कुर्बान। मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, ओए
रंग दे बसंती चोला माए, रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, ओए रंग दे बसंती चोला माए, रंग दे बसंती चोला। दम निकले इस देश की खातिर बस इतना अरमान है, दम निकले इस देश की खातिर बस इतना अरमान है, एक बार इस राह में मरना 100 जन्मों के समान है, एक बार इस राह में मरना 100 जन्मों के समान है, देख के वीरों की कुर्बानी, देख के वीरों की कुर्बानी, अपना दिल भी बोला मेरा, रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, ओए रंग दे बसंती चोला माए, रंग दे बसंती चोला। जिस चोले को पहन शिवाजी खेले अपनी जान पे, जिस चोले को पहन शिवाजी खेले अपनी जान पे, जिसे पहन झांसी की रानी मिट गई अपनी आन पे, जिसे पहन झांसी की रानी मिट गई अपनी आन पे, आज उसी को पहन के निकला, पहन के निकला, आज उसी को पहन के निकला हम मस्तों का टोला माए, रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, होए रंग दे बसंती चोला माए, रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, होए रंग दे बसंती चोला माए, रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, मेरा रंग दे, मेरा रंग दे बसंती चोला, ओए रंग दे बसंती चोला माए, रंग दे बसंती चोला। Thank you.
Thank you, Srinivas ji, for that invigorating performance. Thank you so much. And now I would like to call Pallavi ji to please sing the beautiful song "Ae Mere Watan Ke Logo" in her beautiful and melodious voice. Over to Pallavi ji.
तुम खूब लगा लो नारा, ये शुभ दिन है हम सबका, लहरा लो तिरंगा प्यारा, पर मत भूलो सीमा पर वीरों ने है प्राण गवाए, कुछ याद उन्हें भी कर लो, कुछ याद उन्हें भी जो लौट के घर ना आए, जो लौट के घर ना आए। ऐ मेरे वतन के लोगों, जरा आँख में भर लो पानी। जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बानी। तुम भूल न जाओ उनको, इसलिए सुनो ये कहानी। जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बानी। जब घायल हुआ हिमालय, खतरे में पड़ी आजादी। जब तक थी सांस लड़े वो, जब तक थी सांस लड़े वो, फिर अपनी लाश बिछा दी। संगीन पे धर कर माथा, सो गए अमर बलिदानी। जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बानी। जब देश में थी दीवाली, वो खेल रहे थे होली। जब हम बैठे थे घरों में, जब हम बैठे थे घरों में, वो झेल रहे थे गोली। थी धन्य जवान वो अपने, थी धन्य वो उनकी जवानी। जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बानी। कोई सिख कोई जाट मराठा, कोई सिख कोई जाट मराठा। कोई गुरखा कोई मदरासी, कोई गुरखा कोई मदरासी। सरहद पर मरने वाला, सरहद पर मरने वाला, हर वीर का भारतवासी। जो खून गिरा पर्वत पर, वो खून था हिंदुस्तानी। जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बानी। खून से लथपथ काया, फिर भी बंदूक उठा के 10-10 को एक ने मारा। फिर गिर गए होश गवा के, जब अंत समय आया तो जब अंत समय आया तो कह गए कि अब मरते हैं। खुश रहना देश के प्यारों, खुश रहना देश के प्यारों। अब हम तो सफर करते हैं, अभिमानी जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी दया करो कुर्बानी तुम भूल न जाओ उनको इसलिए कही ये कहानी जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बानी जय हिंद की सेना जय हिंद की सेना जय हिंद जय हिंद जय हिंद
Thank you, Pallaviji, for that rendition. It filled our hearts with deep patriotism. Thank you so much. Community does not necessarily mean living face to face with others. Rather, it means it means never losing the awareness that we are connected to each other. It was a pleasure being in all of your presence. I would like to invite International Coordinator at Large, Gopio International, Dr. Asha Samant, to give the vote of thanks, please. Over to Dr. Asha Samant.
Good evening. Namaskar. It's my great honor on behalf of Gopio International to thank today's event, the leader person, Padma Bhushan awardee, Professor Arvind Panegriaji. You had given in-depth analysis of today's topic, New India, Reclaiming the Lost Glory. It was a wonderful book. I think all of you should read it. Thanks for the wonderful interactive action. And I'm pretty sure you could answer and satisfied all the people who are interested. Time was short, the words are less, but we cannot say a thank you and thank you for the wonderful event you contributed to. My thanks also goes to the person who has taken initiative to arrange this today's event, which is highly successful and also celebration of the Republic Day. I must share with you, this event has been uniquely attended all over the world and people have joined to listen to us. My thanks also goes to Neerija Gupta, who doesn't know her in India, and especially also with us in Gopio. She has been chair of Gopio Academic Council. Thank you as a co-moderator for today's event. My thanks will go to Republic Day messages, to our Gopio President, Sunny Gladkolaji. You gave a wonderful message. It was very emotional. But my sentimental and emotional message, which I'm thankful to come from a young boy from Gopio, Connecticut chapter, Anju, you had been a wonderful, you gave a wonderful message. Thanks to you also. To put this all event today and a successful Republic Day celebration of the day, several volunteers have coordinated and made a great effort. My thanks to our beautiful, wonderful MC Nanditaji, our superior master of ceremony. You gave a wonderful job and you did a wonderful presentation. We all thankful to you. But technology helped Mr. Vijay Garbji. We have no words for you. You are also Vice President of our chapter, New Jersey Central Chapter. Our technical support also has been coordinated and put it together by Chitranjanji. Thank you so much for your help. You're also a board member of the Gopio Manhattan chapter. Thanks again. My thanks to beautiful musician. This event could have not been completed today without listening, and we were all emotional, and for a time being we went back to motherland India and listened to all the freedom fighters. And among those, Palviji, you are blessed. Srinivasan, you just gave us a something back and we could sit down it. Pradeep Parakshi, I could sit, I'm pretty sure many of my like, they were sitting and listening to the songs and went back some long back timing. Wonderful musician you are. This program okay. This program was live streamed by Indus TV, PIO TV, who were media partners with us today. We thank them and other media partners, TV Asia, ITV, Gold, Media, Indian Eye Weekly and Indian Eye Television, Divya Bhaskar and PTV, Punjabi TV, they all will be covering this event today. Finally, I thank you all who participated in this program. We hope that you all become a member of International Gopio, start your chapters in your own places, and also become a member of Chambers of Commerce, Gopio chapters in your own places and your own city and on state. If there is none that, please contact us to become a member of Gopio. Gopio is the only organization worldwide known as for the diaspora. Last but not least, I'm thankful for all the people who took their time to listen to us on a celebration day, and we celebrated. Wish you all happy, healthy, safe New Year 2021 and wishes for the Republic Day. Jai Hind. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Asha ji. Truly an honor to have you amidst our presence. And thank you for your wonderful vote of thanks. And now let's get ready for some Bollywood music. That is the common thread that truly holds many of us, if not all, together. We'd like to start off with Pallavi ji singing for us one of her favorite numbers from Bollywood. So over to Pallavi ji.
Before that, I want to recognize some of our Gopio people who are present there.
Yes, please.
At the time Pallavi gets ready. And our official program is over now. So we don't need to do any more recording, Chitranjan. This is only, people have been requesting for people to sing some Bollywood songs. So those who want to stay, they can stay on. But I do want to recognize whom I did not recognize early, our GICC chairman, Neeraj Bakshi, Mr. Ram Reddy, vice president, was already here too. And then our chapter presidents, New York chapter, Shivendra Sofet, and then vice president Vimal Goel, and treasurer Bridge Agarwal. And then from New York, Gopio New York